This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Save on Cox Internet when you add Cox Mobile and get fiber-powered internet at home and unbeatable 5G reliability on the go. So whether you're playing a game at home,
yes, goal,
or attending one live, you can do more without spending more. Learn how to save at cox.com/internet. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial cable. Cox Mobile runs on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability as measured by Ookla LLC in the U.S. 2H 2023. Results may vary, not an endorsement. Other restrictions apply.
We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Corey Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Maya Zahira. First, a couple of announcements. We're resuming our fundraiser for our upcoming film, Doors of Perception. We had a couple of roadblocks, equipment breakdowns, but we're hoping to be able to resume post-production as soon as possible. The release of the film may be delayed just a bit. If you would like to help with a donation, anything is greatly appreciated. Any donation of $50 or more, you'll get a 1-hour one-on-one discussion with myself, either recorded for a podcast or private, a pre-release showing of our new film, your name in the credits of that film, and a PDF of a warning from history. And again, thank you all so much for the incredible love and support over the years. If you'd like to help in other ways, you can get a Rockfin Premium membership. Go to rockfin.com/FKN+. You'll get access to all our premium content. And you can download our audio episodes directly through Spreaker. That's always easy and free for you. Today I want to welcome back to the show Maya Zahira. She is a visionary teacher, mystic, author, and spiritual mentor whose mission is to educate and empower truth seekers with the most powerful and effective methods for energetic self-care, spiritual empowerment, and psychic protection. Maya, welcome back. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me back, Chris. So great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. I really enjoyed our discussion last time. And the last time you were on, we went into the unseen world of dark attachments and spiritual parasites. And today we're going to dive a little deeper and even get into the different types of entities that can affect us, why, and again, how to clear them. But it's been a while since you've been on. Remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and your work before we get into this.
Sure. So, hi, everybody out there in podcast land. I'm Maya Zahira, and I have been a spiritual teacher for over 30 years, but the last 10 years have been primarily focused on the area of psychic protection. And if you had told me years ago that I would be in this specific field, I would have told you you were crazy. That's never going to happen, because I was totally into the love and light movement, all things positive. I didn't want to look at any of the negative stuff. But the universe, or the powers that be, or God, or whatever you want to call it, had other plans for me, because in 2016, I ended up going through a major psychic attack that was totally unexpected. There was a specific type of entity, which I'll talk about today, that was attached to a healer, a colleague that I went to for a session. She thought that she was working with a council of angels, and so did all of her followers. But instead, it was a dark entity that she was working with, probably unbeknownst to her. And so I came under attack. It was a very confusing 6 weeks, because it was a trickster entity. And so it was really good at shape-shifting and pretending to be all sorts of things, not just the Council of Angels, that the way that it was fooling her, but it was shape-shifting from entity to entity, all different forms, from fairies to, it was pretending to be demons, it was pretending to be angels, it was like, you name it. So it was very confusing. Anyway, fast forward, long story short, I finally was able to figure out what was going on. One of the frustrating aspects of the whole attack was that when I reached out to my fluffy bunny, I say this with love in my heart, when I reached out to my fluffy bunny community of colleagues, they were all like, negative entities don't exist. That didn't happen to you. Like,
that's such a red flag for me. And when anybody says that, I'm like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, what I don't usually say this, but I think it and just chuckle. And I think, well, you might not believe in them, but they believe in you.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I made it through the attack. I'm laughing about it now, but it was definitely no laughing matter. I really, without going into all of the nitty gritty of what happened, at a certain point, I did think that maybe that entity might kill me. It was a very serious attack. And I finally was able to figure out what was going on. I finally was able to identify what type of entity it was, and then to clear it. But again, not with any help from most of my colleagues. I did have a few really beneficial people step up who gave me nuggets of information that I really needed at the time. And so with those golden nuggets, and then along with me using my intuition and my skills, I was able to clear it. When I was going through all of that, though, I remember in the middle of the night being afraid to go to sleep when I was in the thick of things. And thinking, I've reached out for help. Nobody seems to have the answers. There just doesn't seem to be the right kind of support out there. And I don't believe that I'm the only person going through this. If I'm going through this, there's got to be lots of other people going through similar situations. And I bet they're looking for help too. And they're maybe not finding help either. And I thought about how the attack itself was very traumatizing, but the not being able to find help was equally traumatizing, and the gaslighting and all of that, the victim blaming and all of that. And I said to myself, if I get through this, when I get through this, I want to start a support group at least. Well, my work has turned into much more than a support group over the last many years, but I did start a support group, and I still have it. It's a Facebook group called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And it's just so important for people who've gone through any type of psychic attack or entity attack to be able to share their stories. And just to wrap this all up, I'll say, I was looking online this morning. I had I had some personal time. I was looking for some resources, not spiritual resources, but other types of things. And I was looking into 2 different groups that I was thinking about joining or signing up for. And both of them, I found out the whole idea behind them is that you're not allowed to speak about anything negative. You can only speak about positive things. And this is a no negativity zone. And I thought, thank goodness I have my free group and my paid group, because all these people who've been through entity attacks and like horrific things, can you imagine joining a group and being told, well, you're here for support, but you can't talk about anything negative or scary. So I will say this. We are talking about negative things today. We're talking about dark things, but I believe, and I think you do too, Chris, this is why you have your channel, your podcast, is that it's so important for us to put the fear over to the side and be brave enough to look at the realities that are really out there.
Yes.
Because I tell you what, all the people, all the love and lighters, and I used to be one of them, all the love and lighters who think that negative stuff doesn't exist, I've had hundreds, I don't know, I've lost count. So many spiritual seekers come to me who used to be love and light, fluffy bunny, until they started to come under attack. So the point being, even if you don't believe in it and you believe that only positive exists, the negative can still hurt you. And I've heard a lot of people say this idea with me, which is, well, I hope that if I just focus on positive energy, nothing dark will touch me. And I don't want to alarm anyone or initiate fear, but we need to just be brave enough to look at the reality and say, actually, even if you don't look at the dark and you polarize onto all the love and light, dark spiritual situations can still attack you. And in fact, sometimes the dark entities love to attack those who are really all about love and light. So the way that we find empowerment, the way that we grab onto this and find power in a positive way, not putting our head in the sand sort of way, but in a really truly embodied, empowered way, is to learn about what is out there. So we're going to dive into 5 of the most common types of negative entities today.
Excellent. That's a perfect introduction. Now, I wanted to get your insights into something before we break down these 5 types of entities. I had quite a few discussions actually recently with different colleagues about a possible physical nature of these attachments. And we look at parasites, microscopic parasites, and when you zoom in close enough, these things look like demons. These things look like little aliens. And we speculated if there is a physical aspect of these in the microscopic world, but in the macro sense, in the spiritual realms and the unseen realms, these could be the same things that we're dealing with, except on a more energetic basis. What do you think about that?
Well, my spiritual nerd brain is so excited that you brought up this topic. I mean, it's one of those topics that's super interesting, and it's also weird and a little bit freaky too, But yeah, I definitely have ideas on this. So let's break this up into 2 categories. We're talking about microscopic beings like viruses, bacteria, pathogens, even candida in the body. Yeast, all of those things that can overgrow in our body if our microbiome goes out of balance, those can turn into something negative. I mean, we all have some of that in our body. It's not necessarily negative, but when we have an overgrowth, then that consciousness starts to take over. And I use that word on purpose. The consciousness, those are little tiny beings. They are beings, even though they're microscopic, they're beings, they have consciousness, and they want to take over the terrain. And I definitely believe that an overgrowth of microscopic whatever kind of pathogen in a person's body, I see it as a form of, I'll call it psychic attack or negative spiritual interference. And then I was going to break it off into the other category, which is we have the physical pathogens, the physical microscopic beings, but then we also have a type of entity, which wasn't on my list of 5 today, but let's talk about it. There are also spiritual entities that are microscopic in size. And I'll kind of broaden it though, because we have entities that are like little insects, worms, spiders, etheric spiders, and then we have all the way down to the microscopic. And and they're not physical, but they're energetic. And a lot of times I will see somebody who has, let's say that clairvoyantly I see worms in one of their chakras. I see a worm coming out of one of their chakras. And then it turns out that and that's spiritual, right? That's an etheric worm. But that also, they have found out through medical testing that they have actual parasites. They have actual worms. We all have some. Every human being has some, but they have an overgrowth in their digestive system. So a lot of times I'll find that somebody has both. So they have the spiritual version and the physical version. And back to the physical version, many years ago, I had a candida overgrowth. So I learned a lot about candida, a yeast infection in the digestive system that can also go into other parts of the body. And candida are known for being able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And so they literally can affect your thoughts. They will cause you to want to eat sweets because sugar actually feeds the yeast. I mean, I think that's kind of freaky that you have these little microscopic beings in you that are trying to control your mind.
Well, it reminds me of those types of mushroom spores that get into different insects and then attach to their brain and mind control them to just be planted in a certain space, die, and let the mushroom grow out of them. That's terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really the same thing, but different types of parasitic beings will affect humans or certain kinds of animals. And thankfully, that type of mushroom doesn't affect human beings like that. That's pretty freaky. But so that's what I have to say about that. The spiritual version of the microscopic entities can be cleared through energy clearing, shamanic work. So you can actually clear those critters from your energy field. You can do it yourself, or you can have someone work on you, an energy worker in person, or someone who knows how to do it long distance. And then as for the physical types of microscopic beings, I think we would need to take a 2-pronged approach to addressing those that are showing up in the physical. We would need to do the health protocols, like whether it's herbs that kill off the pathogens or the parasites, and also changing how we eat so we're not feeding the parasites. But I have also observed that when it comes to both physical and spiritual parasites, a lot of times the person has a long-standing personality or behavioral imbalance of boundary issues and it's unconscious. It's not the person's fault. It's not like they're inviting these microscopic entities to come in on purpose. But most of the clients that I've worked with who've had a lot of these kinds of issues, they also, when they tell me about their personal life, they have a lot of boundary issues as well. And so I think that if someone has physical parasites or these physical parasitic beings within them and overgrowth, they need to do the health protocols, whatever their practitioner recommends. But then they also need to look at taking sovereignty over their physical and energetic space. This is my home. This is my space. I'm in charge here. I actually had conversations. I mentioned that I had a candida overgrowth years ago. I actually had conversations with the candida and said, hey guys, this is my place. Y'all need to go. So it's important to set boundaries. There's boundary imbalances going on also when those entities get out of balance.
Great. That was a great explanation about the microscopic aspects of this. Now let's talk about the different types that you came here to discuss.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 5 most common types of entities that I observe in my personal life and in my professional life working with clients. I have been a clairvoyant my whole life, and all the other clairs as well. And so what I'm going to share with you is my own firsthand experiences and observations. So I want to clarify that what I'm sharing with you isn't information based on a religious dogma or religious scriptures or anything like that. You know, with all due respect to all of that out there, what I'm sharing with you today is based on what I've seen, experienced, etc., firsthand. And so I'm going to give you an umbrella overview of the list first, and then I'll break it down. I'll break down each one. So the first most common entity, this won't surprise people, negative entity, is demons. So no big surprise. The second on my list is jinn. And if some of your viewers will have heard of jinn, some of you won't know what that is, and I'll explain it. And the third is ghosts. So discarnate humans.
Save on Cox Internet when you add Cox Mobile and get fiber-powered internet at home and unbeatable 5G reliability on the go. So whether you're playing a game at home,
yes, cool,
or attending one live, you can do more without spending more. Learn how to save at cox.com/internet. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial cable. Cox Mobile runs on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability as measured by Ookla LLC in the U.S. 2H 2023. Results may vary, not an endorsement. Other restrictions apply.
And the fourth is thought form entities. Again, if you don't know what that is, I will explain it. And then the fifth one is kind of a special category that I call false light entities. So let's dive in. And of course, I know, Chris, feel free to interrupt because I can just talk and talk. So interrupt if you want to direct me or ask a certain question. So let's start with demons. Sure. All right. So just looking at my notes here. Okay. So again, this is based on what I've seen and not based on Christian scripture or anything or dogma or anything like that. The first demons that I saw that I can recall were when I was a teenager. So I've seen them for a long time. And over the years, I've discerned that there's a hierarchy in the demonic realm. So I'm going to start with the middle of the hierarchy, and then I'll go down and then back up. The middle of the hierarchy, those are the ones that I think we see a lot in like Hollywood movies. What I see clairvoyantly does look pretty similar. It's a humanoid sized person-looking creature. So they look like a human. They have a human face. Their skin might be a different color, either red or gray or like a light greenish. So their skin is not regular human colors that we have in the human race. When I have seen the mid-level of demons, they usually have horns. And I don't know why that is. I don't know like the origins of why they have horns, but in the cases when I've seen this level of demon, I will either see them where they're standing by themselves, or I will see the demon superimposed over a living person. So for example, there's this person that I know, the person walks into the room. I have suddenly switched into my clairvoyant vision. I see this person that I know, and I also see a demon face superimposed over the human being's face. And I'll see, in one case, I saw these little stubby horns, another case, the big ram's horns. So they've all been different, right? All different, not all the same. The mid-range demons are the ones that I see that I'm going to use the word possess, that possess people the most, but in a way that's less Hollywood and more subtle. Because the high ranking demons, which I'll talk about in a minute, that those are the ones that cause levitation. Okay. But most of the people who have a demon attachment have a mid-range demon. That demon, the middle range demon, is of average intelligence and loves to create suffering, and will either be hanging out in the person's energy field or will actually step into the person. So the person's consciousness is still sort of there, but then the demon will have moments when they're running the show. The person observing might see that their friend's eyes change. Maybe their eyes just look weird, or their eyes turn black, or their eyes turn red. And their voice might change. So I was adopted when I was a baby. So I was raised by parents that were not biologically related, but they were my parents. My mother, who raised me, this would describe her. Her voice would change. Her eyes would turn black. No one else in the family talks about this, but this is what I saw many, many times with her. So let's drop down to the lower ranking demons. The lower ranking demons, how I have seen them, is they are like creatures.
Now, I want to ask you something before we get too deep into that. Primarily, will these mid-range demons feed off of negative emotions that they create, such as arguments or fights, degenerate sexual energy? How far will these mid-range demons take a person?
Yes. So actually, yes to all of that. And all of the hierarchy of demons will actually participate in all of the above of what you just mentioned. And so the main thing that all of the demons would like to do is to create human suffering. So they will activate negativity, they'll create arguments, they'll put a lot of darkness into a person's mind, create depression. They will initiate or worsen addictions because, again, they just want suffering and they feed off of that energy. So that's whether it's the mid-range or the upper part of the hierarchy or the creature level ones. They in their own way. The difference in the hierarchy is a little bit in how they appear, and also level of intelligence and how dangerous they are. But across the board, they all want to create suffering and chaos and lack of peace.
Okay. Yeah. Now you were getting into the lower levels.
Sure. Yeah, the lower hierarchy, these are creatures. To me, they look like a cross between gargoyles and flying monkeys. They're about that size. They can vary in their appearance. And again, since they're creatures, they tend to be very low intelligence, working more on primal instincts, as opposed to the mid-range and the higher level that are more intelligent. But they still will do all of the things that you described. They will try to initiate sexual energy so they can feed off of that. The whole range of demons will do that. They'll try to initiate suffering. They'll siphon a person's life force energy, all of that. And sometimes I'll see a combination of the different levels in a person's energy field. So,
but the main thing is the lower levels are less intelligent. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So they're still troublemakers, but they do all of the negative aspects. They feed off of energy. They create suffering, but they're at creature level intelligence, right?
Right.
And then we have the higher. Let's jump up to the higher level of the hierarchy. These beings are, I feel they're very ancient. The upper levels of the hierarchy are ancient. They are extremely powerful to a degree that I don't want to be around them at all. I'm extremely careful if I encounter. I actually encountered one when I went to a Catholic conference, and they were doing some ceremony, and this thing showed up and was pretending to be Mary and then Jesus. And so the upper level of the hierarchy they are more adept at shape-shifting than the lower end of the hierarchy. So the higher up you go, the more they can shapeshift into other forms. And the higher level, they're extremely intelligent in a psychopathic sort of way, right? So they're like Machiavellian, like they want to destroy a person's life, or there'll be this level of trickery. Like this is the level of demon that will, really cause someone to sell their soul to the devil, or
would you say that this is also the level that a lot of the very powerful groups that may try to control things on this planet are dealing with? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a whole mess of demons. I think that mid-level to upper-level demons are involved with the dark cabal. I think they all love to have their finger in the pie, and it's not just the upper levels. Right. Okay. So the upper levels of the hierarchy, they are less common on the earth plane. So we don't see as many of them as we do the demonic creatures and the mid-level demons. But when they do show up, anybody who is sensitive at all will feel it is a palpable sense of evil. I get chills right now just thinking about it. So, and then we've got these three categories, but then let's kind of take those categories and put them off to the side and acknowledge that there are some demons that tend to specialize in certain things. So a lot of them are just more general. They just want to create suffering, but there are some that are specifically sexual demons that their MO is to activate sexual energy in order to feed off of it. And they usually want to create distortion, like create sexual energy in a distorted sort of way that's not natural to the person's natural tendencies. Because I want to be clear, sexual energy is natural. It's a positive thing. It can be very healing, but that's not how these demons are working with that energy. They're feeding off of it. They're trying to create darkness within humans, confusion about self-identity, all sorts of things. But it's mostly about feeding off of life force energy. Anything you want to know? Anything that I haven't answered yet about demons? Well, I have a few questions, but they're going to be general questions after we cover all of the entities. So not as of yet, but we can move on to the next type if you'd like.
Sure. Just a couple things I didn't mention before, that a lot of people, when they encounter a demon, even if they are not clairvoyant, even if they can't see entities, they might smell a smell of sulfur or death, like something rotting, death. That's a very common thing that happens when people go on paranormal investigations and there's demonic activity in the building. A lot of times the people will report smelling that sulfur kind of smell, or the smell, it smells like a crypt, like there's death in the air. That's a very common demonic phenomenon.
Very
so let's go on to the next one. Yeah. So before we go on to the next one, just reiterating for everybody that, there is a chance for any person on the planet that they'll end up having some type of paranormal situation in their life. And I'm a big believer that if you know what you're dealing with, or even if you're not psychic, even if you're not clairvoyant, if you have the information, and then you have an experience of some kind, something happens in your home or when you're visiting a place, something happens, you have the information that you say, okay, I think we encountered a demon. And then we have some ideas of what we'll circle back around at the end and give a few basic ideas on how to clearing entities. Sometimes can be complicated. It depends on the type of entity, but I think it's really important to know, even before you've had those kinds of experiences, to have that knowledge in your pocket, so that if you run into something that you'll know, like if you walk into a building at night and you're like, oh, this is all the symptoms that lady talked about of a demon, well, we should leave. Right? Because the longer you stay, the more chance that demon is going to want to attach to you. And a demonic attachment is not fun. It's not a cool thing.
Doesn't sound like
it. No. Okay, so let's go on to number 2.
All right.
The second most common entity that I run into is a jinn, and this can be spelled J-I-N or J-I-N-N or D-J-I-N-N. And the reason for the various spellings is because the word comes from Arabic, which has a different alphabet than the alphabet that we Westerners use. So it is spoken jinn, but you can spell it in all sorts of ways. So the idea of jinn actually comes from the Middle East, and the holy book, the Quran, speaks about jinn quite a bit. But the important thing that we need to know is that just because the idea and the folklore and the mythology and the holy books talk about jinn, this is not just a Middle Eastern situation. Okay, this is not just something that happens in the Middle East or in a certain part of the world. In my work, I've personally encountered jinn. The story that I told at the beginning of the shapeshifter entity that was pretending to be a council of angels, that was a jinn. That was my first head-on collision with a jinn. And then after that, I've had several personal encounters, and I've worked with several clients. Since I work online, I've had clients all over the world, and there are clients all over the world. I've got clients right now in Sweden and in the UK and in America and all sorts of places that are having jinn issues. So we need to remember they can be anywhere. Now we might question, like, maybe they originated like in the Middle East. I don't know, but currently they're everywhere. They're all over the place. And this is an example of, even if you don't believe in something, or even if you don't know about something, it can still happen to you. Because when I went through my encounter in 2016 and I told somebody about what was happening, they said, that sounds like a jinn. And I said, No, it's not, because I've never heard of a jinn before. I don't even know what that is. Therefore, it isn't happening. Well, it was happening, right? So let's talk about what they are. I've seen jinn in a few different forms. So their natural state when they're not shape-shifting, because their main thing that they do is shape-shift. These are the shapeshifters, okay? Their original form when they're not shape-shifting is what the Quran calls flameless fire. So they're plasma beings. They're plasma beings. I actually caught the one that I was dealing with on camera.
Oh, wow.
It appeared over my shoulder at the other place where I was living. Thank goodness, not here. And it looked like energy. And I also saw it above me when I was in bed. It attacked me very violently, and it was hovering above me. And it was in that plasma form. And then as I've worked with clients, I've seen jinn in plasma form in those instances as well. But more frequently, they will show up in their shape-shifted form. So jinn are master shapeshifters. They are the most masterful shapeshifters that out of any other entities that I've ever encountered. A lot of people think of demons as being great shapeshifters. Not at all compared to jinn. Jinn can pretend to be anything. In fact, it's extremely common for them to pretend to be any of these things. Fairies, elementals, angels, Jesus, Mary, any of the ascended masters that people work with. I actually saw a jinn shapeshift into a whole pantheon of Greek gods and goddesses. That same jinn, when the Greek gods and goddesses didn't fool me, it then shapeshifted. Actually, I've got the order reversed. First, it shapeshifted into a council of aliens, and it told me this was a few years after my original encounter. This was my second major run-in with a jinn that I encountered at a New Age bookstore, at a New Age gift shop, and that thing followed me home, and it pretended to be the Council of Orion.
Wow.
It said, we are the Council of Orion. We understand that you are a truth seeker, and you could channel these important messages for the world, and you would be an important person. And as this was happening, I thought, oh, no wonder, because it was very convincing. I was like, this is very convincing. If I didn't already know about jinn, if I didn't know how they feel, how they set, like how they come through, I might have been fooled. And I thought, no wonder so many channelers are being fooled by jinn now.
This is important because I think this is happening on a very large scale right now. And I've experienced this through many people that are quote-unquote channelers. And from what I understand, these entities deal a lot with flattery and the ego and pumping up your ego to make you feel special, like you're a receiver of this special message, and only you can bring this to humanity, and it really pumps the people up, and it's hard for them to understand that they're dealing with a trickster entity, that they're not working for their best interest, they're working for this entity.
Yeah, I am just so, I mean, it's bad that that's happening, but I am just so happy to hear you talk about this, because I've been talking about this for a few years now, and I feel like I'm shouting out into an empty cavern. It's like I'm saying, hey, all you guys, that's the entity that you're channeling isn't what you think that it is. And you hit the nail right on the head. I actually experienced firsthand the flattery and the ego stroking. And I thought, wow, it's, I have a healthy sense of ego, but I can't be controlled by ego and flattery like that. That just doesn't work with me. So when it was trying to flatter me and say, oh, you'll be a really important person, blah, blah. I was like, that doesn't work for me. I don't care about that, and then it shapeshifted, tried to pretend to be gods and goddesses. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. I know what this is. And then it shifted again into demons. And I went, oh, how fascinating. Now that, because when it shapeshifted into the gods and goddesses, it said, we are here to protect you from that entity. That was messing with you. I'm like, no, you actually are that entity. And then it shapeshifted into demons. And I said, how fascinating. Since those other forms didn't work for me, now you're going to try to scare me. And here's where it gets really tricky is when a jinn shapeshifts into demons, and this is what happened with my original jinn attack. I thought I had demons attacking me because the jinn was shapeshifting into all sorts of things, including demons. And so a person will think that they're dealing with demons, but it's actually a jinn pretending to be demons because the whole idea with jinn is they also are very psychopathic. They're major psychopaths, and they want to confuse a person. They want to create chaos. And what they'll do is they will manipulate things in however they're shape-shifting and how they're interacting with you. They'll manipulate things to get you to welcome it in. So this is why it will show up as someone's benevolent spirit guide or whatever, so that the person says, "Oh, welcome in," and then the jinn hooks in, and then jinn just it's not as much with the demons in delighting in suffering. The jinn delight in creating confusion. And that jinn love to be worshipped. This is why they will often pretend to be angels or fake Jesus, not the real Jesus, or whatever other ascended master, because they suck up all that worship energy. They have huge egos and they love it. So they will love to go to like show up at an event where there's a lot of worship, whether it's a religious event. I actually went to a Christian church where there was a huge jinn floating above the congregation. And it was just sucking up all of that worship energy. That I found that very disturbing because I was raised Christian and Catholic. And I was like, why does God allow that? I don't know. But and then I have seen jinn do that same sort of nonsense at a lot of New Age events. And I'm not anti-church, I'm not anti-New Age, but we need to understand that there's certain kinds of entities like jinn who love to infiltrate what are supposed to be safe spaces because people aren't anticipating anything like that.
And like I said, I see that this could be an epidemic right now, especially with the misleading and confusing information that is coming out of the spiritual, quote-unquote, truth community right now. And I think it's something we really need to be aware of, like you said.
Yeah, and jinn are working through a lot of channelers that are very well, most of them are very well-meaning. They have a big heart, a pure heart. They want to be helping humanity, but they don't want to see the truth about what's going on. Maybe there was a little bit of ego stoking or some insecurity that was activated by the jinn so that the jinn could take hold. And so there's all these messages coming forth in the truther movement and the New Age movement that are channeled messages, whether it's from the aliens or Ascended Master so-and-so or whatever. And the messages are, it's very much like how a human psychopath would operate, where there's 80% truth and 20% lies. Because people are not going to believe a bunch of nonsense. Actually, people sometimes do believe a bunch of nonsense. But it's easier to trick people by using that tactic of 80% truth, 20% lies. And the lies come through very seamlessly. It's usually with the intention to throw people off track. Again, whether it's in the truther movement or wherever, it's to get people chasing their tail in the wrong direction instead of seeing whatever is true that's happening on the planet. So it's to keep people off target and ungrounded.
Right on. Great information. Anything else about jinn before we move on?
Yeah, I'll add one more thing. Just a word of warning to people dealing with jinn. I have helped many people get rid of jinn issues, but I've learned along the way, especially from some of my first personal experiences with jinn, that you can't approach them in the same way that you do demons. And this is what I mean. In the Catholic exorcism tradition, it's all about being super aggressive and like aggressively forcing the demon to leave the person, right? If you take that type of aggressive or even assertive approach with a jinn, the result can be really horrible. Okay. The jinn, and I'll just be straightforward. The reason why I learned this was the second encounter that I had with a jinn, where I mentioned a few minutes ago that I went into a New Age bookstore and this thing followed me home. I pretended to be aliens and demons and everything. I was very aggressive in setting boundaries, which normally setting energetic boundaries is a good thing. I learned the hard way that when I set aggressive boundaries with this jinn, within a couple of days, my cat was dead.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I won't go into all of the why and how. Thankfully, I lived through it, but it was like that jinn was pissed that I set that boundary. And it probably didn't want to kill me. It wanted to punish me for setting the boundary.
Right.
And like a lot of people who have pets, this was not just a pet. This was a very beloved pet. And so the idea was to punish me. And so jinn will, I've seen again and again that if you set very direct boundaries with them, they will lash out, whether it's causing harm to a loved one or some other kind of harm directly to you, or what I've seen quite commonly is that they will just create a huge upheaval of chaos and horrible situations in the person's life if they set really hard boundaries with the jinn. So what we have to do is more of a backdoor approach. And this is what I do with my clients is we work on, and this of course takes a while, but we work on addressing and healing through spiritual work and shamanic methods. We work on addressing and healing all of the root causes, all of the core wounds, any past life connections with that jinn, like all of the doorways where that jinn might be able to come in the first place. We actually close all those doorways, right? So it's more of a backdoor approach. So I would just warn people, definitely don't go shouting at a jinn and telling it to F off and leave, because it's going to let you, the backlash is not worth it, and it doesn't work.
Interesting. Right. So number 3.
Should we go next? Yeah. Okay. So we just talked about the two most intense entities. So now it's going to get a little easier as we go through the rest of the list. Number 3 on the list is ghosts or discarnate souls. This is I know everybody uses different terminology, but this is the terminology that I use to refer to a human soul that is no longer living. So it's out of its physical body. And for whatever reason, this human soul, did not complete its journey over to the other side. So there's a different experience where someone passes over and they go over to the afterlife, and then sometimes they will come back to visit. And that's a different situation. The energy is a lot more clean and clear. It's not so ghosty and creepy, right? It's usually a very comforting visit from Aunt Joanne or whoever family member is showing up to comfort you, right? So we're talking about earthbound human souls, those that are at least for a short time or for a longer period of time stuck on the earth plane or choosing to stay on the earth plane. Either they got confused, they had a sudden death and they don't realize that they're dead, or they know that they're dead, but maybe they're afraid of the afterlife. Maybe they feel some guilt about something from their life, or they did a lot of dark deeds when they were alive, and they're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen if I go into the light. And some people stick around because they are very attached to experiences on the earth plane, and specifically addictive experiences. So if a person is actively addicted when they pass away, sometimes they want to stick around on the earth plane so that they can attach to a living human and encourage that living human to act out their addiction. It could be the same exact type of addiction, let's say alcohol, or a different kind of addiction, but they want to experience that through the person. So they might be hanging out in the person's energy field, attached via an energy cord, or even, especially when the person gets blackout drunk, where when the living person gets blackout drunk, their soul steps aside. And so the discarnate, the earthbound spirit often will step in and be working the person's body and drinking and enjoying that physical pleasure. Wow. And this is, as I speak this, I'm just speaking the facts, but we acknowledge that people who are dealing with addiction, whether they are alive or deceased, it's a difficult situation that many people struggle with. But it is one of the reasons, it's one of the issues that can happen with discarnate souls, with ghosts. One of the things that we need to know is that whether a spirit, whether a ghost is on the positive end of the spectrum, so a friendly ghost, neutral, or evil, because they were evil when they were alive, they were a dark person, and when they pass away, they're still dark. Whatever part of the spectrum they are on, it's not a good idea to have any type of ghost in your home. And I've had people disagree with me on this, and that's okay. We can disagree. But what I've seen is that a ghost, a spirit that has not passed over, let's say a positive spirit, one who's trying to be helpful, they have to maintain their life force energy in some way, shape, or form. And so the way that they maintain their energy is by hooking in and feeding off of those that are living, whether it's pets or people or, adults, children. And so even if we have a friendly ghost in our home, somebody is being fed on. Even if the ghost doesn't intend any harm, somebody's being fed on. And also we need to think in terms of do we really want this friendly ghost to be living forever in this house? Really, it's better for them to move on and move into the afterlife. So, in my opinion.
So that would be the solution, is to help them become aware that they need to move on. Yes,
to help them become aware. And with a friendly, even from friendly to neutral ghost, oftentimes just talking to the ghost and having a conversation, explaining things. So you don't have to be a psychic or specialize in rescuing souls. You don't have to be a professional. You can have a conversation with the ghost and say, hey, it's okay. You can move on to the other side. and ask the person's guardian angels to come. You can say a prayer, whatever fits your particular belief system, but asking the person to move on to the other side can be helpful. Obviously, they still have free will, though, so if they don't want to move on, that's up to them, but you still have the say as to who's allowed in your house. So if they don't want to leave, you're like, but usually they will. The friendly ghosts will go ahead and leave. But if they don't want to leave, it's like, okay, well, we are the living humans who are living in this house now, and we're not allowing any ghosts here. And so you can make them leave because you have authority over your physical space. And then obviously, if you have a negative ghost in your home, a lot of times the negative ghosts, a lot of times people will wonder if they're dealing with a demon, even if it's not a being that is of the demonic realm, but it's a human soul. There are some human souls that are just so dark and troubled that they kind of give living people that same sort of feeling, like the chill down the back of the spine, that feeling of doom, a feeling of darkness. So there's a similarity there. Years ago, about 30 years ago, I lived in a haunted farmhouse. I didn't know it was haunted when I moved in, but I found out very quickly. And there were a variety of ghosts living there. I saw different women in pioneer clothing holding babies, and other people. And there was one ghost, though, that was very, very dark. And it never appeared in human form. I never saw it in human form. It was just this blacker than black presence. And it was just this black energy. And my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light, I opened the book by talking about that attack. This was when I was in my 20s. And I woke up and there was this black energy that was over me, and I couldn't move. And that entity, along with a lot of the ghosts, they were living in the attic. And that it was not a demon. I'm just 1,000% sure, because I have a sense for how they feel since I've had so many entity encounters. This was definitely a human, but just super, super dark, psychopathic human. And it actually had trapped all of those other ghosts. It was not allowing them to leave. So that was an interesting situation to observe. And so, like I said, with good or neutral ghosts, usually saying a prayer or doing a smoke cleanse is usually all that's needed to get them to leave. But if you're dealing with either a super dark ghost or a demon, here's a little tool. We haven't given any tools yet. Burning frankincense resin is I really love physical tools like that, because you don't have to spend years studying occult knowledge. And it's great if you do, then you have all of the spiritual practices that you can do. But let's say you don't have all that knowledge yet, and you've got this really dark human spirit in your basement or a demon. Either way, the frankincense resin, burning frankincense resin, is a great way to at least clear it out temporarily until you can find a permanent solution. Real easy solution. Temporarily.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions about some solutions after we finish with the final entities here, because we've got about 30 minutes left. So
2 more. Okay.
Let's move on to what we have for number 4.
Sure. Number 4 is a really interesting one. These are thought form entities. Thought form entities. They're also called tulpa, Tulpa. And these are a lot different than the other types of entities that we've talked about so far, because what this is this is a phenomena that's created by focused intent. So one or several people can focus their attention on creating an energy or an entity. They can use their mental focus, their emotional focus, and create an entity in this way. And then the next level to that is that in addition to using emotions and thought, a person who is adept at occult practices can use any flavor of black magic, whatever flavor they happen to be practicing. Or it doesn't have to be black magic. It can be, because we're a tulpa, a thought form entity, can be used for good or bad. So they can use whatever occult practice, beneficial or dark, to create an entity that is specifically created for the purpose maybe of healing or protection or for harming a person. Okay. But even I've seen thought form entities. In fact, last week, living in my world is kind of interesting because I get random information. And so I live out in the country. I spend all this time out here. And I had this vision where there's a church about a half an hour from me. And I saw the saint that is the patron saint of that church. And I saw that the saint that hangs out at that church is not the actual saint. It's not the actual spirit of that saint. It's actually a thought form entity. All the people at the church who have been praying to this saint, they've actually created a thought form entity that is Saint so-and-so. So thought form. So this actually brings up a question that my spiritual nerd brain has been thinking about for a while, which is, okay, we know that there is such a thing as thought form entities, but is it possible that some of the deities that we think are real are actually thought form entities that have been created through prayer and focused thought and emotions and belief. Now, I'm not saying that I have the ultimate answer to that, but that is a big question mark in my mind. So jumping over to the side here onto the negative aspect of thought form entities, I've worked with clients who were dealing with people sending black magic their way and trying to harm them. And I've seen people who thought that they had demons attacking them. And when I would clairvoyantly look at the situation, I would see that, these are actually not demons. The black magicians created thought form entities to send at the person, and they created thought form entities to look like demons. The idea was to terrorize the person. And in a recent incident, what was interesting to me is that the coven of witches that were doing this, they were not at the experience level to be able to actually call in and control demons, which is not a good idea for people to do. But there are people that do it as a part of their practice. They were not at the experience level to know how to do that. It's not a good idea anyway, but they were at the experience level to be able to create thought form entities. So they actually attacked this person with these thought form entities created to look like demons. So the person thought that they were being attacked by all these demons. And I said, well, the good news is you're not dealing with actual demons. Thought form entities are a lot easier to clear because they are, when I see them, it's like they're halfway see-through, like they're not fully formed energetically, especially if those who have created them, like this somewhat inexperienced coven of dark witches, they they really didn't have the ability to create fully formed entities. And so these thought form entities were really easy to clear. So a big takeaway is that thought form entities can be created just by focused
Our imagination.
thought, by imagination. So, okay, let's kind of jump over to another area that I haven't talked about. There are local tales in different parts of the world about like so and so entity, or like this area is known to have sightings
like
of
Louisiana, the Rougarou, the Beast of Bray Road, these different types of cryptids.
Right, exactly. Right. So when there are a lot of people who think about and believe in, or maybe feel afraid of, or they're excited about all the different feelings, oh, maybe we'll see a sighting of such and such or whatever, or they're afraid of it, whatever, the whole spectrum, all these people believing in that entity, whatever it is, whatever the being is, then we tend to see sightings of that being in that area. And I believe that's because it's actually sometimes a thought form entity.
Interesting.
Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah, I've considered that as well. That's very interesting. All right, number 5. What do we have?
Number 5. Number 5 is a unique category because this is an umbrella that's going to include some of the entities that we've already talked about. So number 5 is the term that I use, false light entity. A false light entity is any negative entity, including any that we've talked about before today, any negative entity of any kind that is pretending to be a benevolent entity. So a negative entity that's pretending to be good. So we also call these imposter entities. We call them trickster beings. And so we talked about jinn. Jinn would fit under that umbrella because they are shapeshifters who are negative beings. Every experience that I've had with jinn, by the way, has been negative. I've had people say that there are some that are positive. That might be true. I've never met any that are positive. So we have jinn that are under this umbrella of false light entity. There are some ghosts, some negative ghosts that are adept enough at manipulating energy that they can shapeshift, but not as they're just not as good at it as jinn. Jinn are the masters at it. And then we also have demons that sometimes shapeshift. And then, there really are infinite entities out there, by the way. And then if we were to also include extraterrestrials, there are extraterrestrials that are really good, certain ones that are really good at shapeshifting. And so, we can really put any type of spiritual entity or any type of entity that's really good at shapeshifting, that's coming from a negative, polarized place that is pretending to be
Now,
good.
I've wondered often if what we understand as extraterrestrials may just be one of the previous entities we've discussed that are tricksters, that are shapeshifters, that play on our technological sci-fi understanding of the age and era we're in based on all the movies we've seen. They might play off of that emotion if we're sci-fi nerds or something like that. What do you think?
That's an interesting theory. I actually also read Rosemary Guiley's book, The Vengeful Jinn, and she talked about, if I understand her point correctly, she talked about how she, in her opinion, she believes that all sorts of phenomenon that we experience, including fairies, ghosts, even alien encounters, Bigfoot, all of that is jinn. She thinks that it's all jinn. I I feel blessed and lucky that I have the intuitive and psychic abilities that I do. I am an open-minded questioner, so I'm always analyzing everything, and I'm kind of forensic in my approach, where I have my own personal and professional experiences, and I'm feeling into it, and I'm going, okay, I have this client who's having ET experiences, let's say, negative ET experiences. Does this feel in any way like a jinn? And sometimes that's a yes, but a lot of times it's no. It's like, no, this the way that it's presenting, the way that it feels, the way that it's operating is like nowhere near how a jinn operates, right? So I think that the thought that I have on what you just shared is that sometimes it can be the case that there are shapeshifters pretending to be aliens or what have you, but I don't think that's always the case across the board.
That makes sense. Now, there's one more thing I want to explore when it comes to solutions and becoming aware of these things. It's actually a two-part question. First of all, there are some of these entities, I understand, that we have to make some sort of agreement with them in order for them to take control of certain aspects of our consciousness, whether we are aware of that agreement or we do it in our sleep or we do it because of some sort of addiction, that some of these entities require that agreement. And then we'll get to the second part after that.
Okay. So yes, usually there is some type of an agreement, but what I see with the type of clients that I tend to attract are pretty wholesome kind of people, because we tend to attract people that are similar vibration to us. And so these are not people who tended to like willingly make a demonic pact, for example. Yes. But there are people that do that. And I have helped people who've done things like that. But most of the people that I've worked with are those that really never have been on that end of the spectrum. But whether it's demonic beings or other types of negative beings, what's really common is to manipulate or trick a person into making an agreement. So most of the negative agreements that I see with clients, where they have an attachment or they're under demonic rule, like their whole all the generations of their family are under demonic rule because somebody was tricked, or they were an active participant. So it can be a contract that the person themselves made or was tricked into, or further up in the generational line, there was a pact, a promise made. One thing that I've seen a lot is that a person who is actively working with the dark, knowingly working with the dark, will promise the rest of their generations to the demonic realm. And then, even though all these other people in the generations to come didn't make that contract, they didn't make that promise, the original promise still stands. So then when I have this client who is dealing with something from 5 generations ago, it is possible to undo that original contract. So those are some different ways that those agreements or contracts can be made. And no matter if the person made an agreement willingly, or if it was through manipulation, or it was from another generation, 100% across the board, all negative contracts can be revoked. So if anybody's watching this who's like, oh my gosh, I did this thing when I was younger, I can't believe I did it, I've made a promise to some kind of negative force, there is hope. All of it can be revoked.
Excellent.
Okay.
Now, this also goes along with that as far as possible solutions of ridding these entities. The name of Jesus Christ is a very powerful tool, it seems, towards some of these. And I've heard that even in some experiences with dark attachments that it has no effect. What is your understanding of the power of the name, why it has effect on some and why it doesn't on others?
Mhm. That's a great question. So first, I will start off by saying this is one of those questions that I am still working through. It's one of those big existential questions of like, why does this work with some entities and not with others, etc. But so I don't have the ultimate answer, but I do have a little bit to say about this. I will point out that demons tend to react very badly to and fearfully to the name of Jesus, and also to Mary, Mother Mary, both. So they respond very badly to both of those names, right? A lot of power there. But when it comes to jinn coming from a different perspective, they actually really don't respond at all to the name of Jesus. In fact, what they don't like is when you play an audiobook of the Quran.
Interesting.
They hate that. Or if you play prayers, sung prayers from the Quran. There are many free Arabic prayers, free Muslim prayers on YouTube that you can find if anybody's dealing with jinn issues. You can minimize it. It's not going to totally get rid of it, but you can weaken the energy by playing these prayers. So it's just an interesting, like, that's fascinating that this type of entity really hates the name of Jesus. This other type of entity hates the Quran, right? And why is that? I don't have the ultimate answer, but I'm sure this will start great discussion.
It is, and I've already got one more question I have to throw out there. You were mentioning the thought forms and the tulpas and how you see them as sort of translucent, not fully formed. And I'm wondering if demons and jinn may be the same thing, except they've received so much power and intention over thousands and thousands of years that they're fully formed and have some sort of power over humanity because of the intention and the power of our own imagination and our creative abilities. We made them as well. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My spiritual nerd brain is like, whoa, I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of the day. First thing that I'll say is that from my perspective, and I'm not God, I don't have like the ultimate truth about everything. I can just speak to my own perspective as someone who has pretty developed psychic abilities and a lot of experiences firsthand with entities. And so as I've met these different entities in person, not in the physical, but you know what I mean, in person, I've met them and seen and felt and observed how they operate, how they function, how they feel, what they look like. To me, jinn and demons are very different. And I've actually watched a lot of podcasts in the past, different podcasters who've kind of lumped demons and jinn together, and they'll kind of be like, oh, demons and jinn is the same thing. And I'd be like, no, not in my experience. Like they just have a very different personality, very different MO, very different appearance. And right now in my own seeking, I'm curious about not just what's in the holy religious beliefs, but I'm really curious. I'm kind of on this seeking right now of wanting to find out, like, where did these beings originally originate from? And I think that's kind of what you're wanting to know. Like, maybe they originated as the same thing, and then so I find your hypothesis really fascinating because it kind of goes down another rabbit hole, which is how there are a lot of ways that we do create our own reality in this matrix. through like maybe through our thoughts and beliefs that we created God, and all of that. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe not, but yeah, so I don't have the ultimate answer.
Well, that's
on
what this
that,
show is
but,
about, is
but
exploring all those possibilities. And we got some great information today. Thank you so much, Maya. This was fantastic. We'll definitely have to do it again. Again, I feel like we kind of just barely scratched the surface on some of this stuff, so we'll have you back. Before you close out, though, remind the audience, if they're interested in finding out more about you and may have some of these troubles, what's the best way they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. Okay. So the best place to go is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. That's my website. And on the website, you can sign up for the email list where you can get a lot of information. On the website, you can also click on Work with Maya, and you'll find my academy. So people who are dealing with major attacks often need ongoing assistance and mentoring. So the academy would be what you need. And you'll also see a listing of all my books on the website as well.
Excellent. Maya, thank you so much. We'll definitely be doing this again. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See y'all then.